Story 1. The Rest Stop That Aged. The bathroom mirror showed me 20 years older every time I looked, and when I came out after washing my hands, the parking lot had aged too. My truck rusted, tires flat, windshield cracked, and the attendant who'd been 25 was now 45 with gray hair and said, "Welcome back," like I'd been gone for decades, though I'd only been inside for 3 minutes. I touched my face and felt wrinkles that shouldn't exist. And when I checked my phone, the date was correct, but my photo gallery showed 20 years of pictures I'd never taken, places I'd never been, a life I'd never lived. Daniel Murphy, 51 years old, hauling refrigerated goods across the Midwest for 19 years. October 7th, 2023, eastbound on I-80 through Iowa, middle of the afternoon. The rest stop at mile marker 267 was one I'd used dozens of times. Standard facilities, vending machines, picnic tables, nothing remarkable. I pulled in needing a bathroom break and coffee, parked in my usual spot near the building. The attendant at the information desk was a young guy, early 20s, reading something on his phone. He glanced up as I entered, gave a polite nod. I headed to the men's room, which was empty and clean, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Normal. Everything was completely normal as I walked to the sink, turned on the water, looked up at the mirror. The face staring back was mine, but wrong. Older. Deep lines around the eyes and mouth, hair mostly gray, skin sagging at the jaw. I looked 70, maybe 75. I jerked back from the mirror, touched my face. It felt normal under my fingers, same as always. But the reflection showed deterioration, age, time passing in fast forward. I blinked hard. The reflection blinked back, wrinkled eyelids drooping. I turned away from the mirror, heart hammering, checked my hands. They looked fine. 51 years old, some weathering but nothing extreme. I looked back at the mirror. The 70-year-old version stared back. I backed out of the bathroom, pulse racing, and nearly collided with the attendant in the hallway. He was older now, not the 20-something who'd nodded at me 5 minutes ago. This version was mid-40s, graying temples, reading glasses hanging from his neck. "Everything okay, sir?" he asked, and his voice was the same but rougher, worn by years that hadn't passed. "You were younger," I said stupidly. "Just now. You were in your 20s. He smiled, confused. "I'm 46, sir. Have been for 3 months now." He said it like I should know, like we'd had this conversation before. I pushed past him, headed for the exit, needed to get back to my truck and leave this place. The door stuck slightly, hinges squeaking in a way they hadn't when I'd entered. Outside, the parking lot was wrong. My truck sat where I'd parked it, but it had aged. Paint faded and peeling, chrome. Fixtures rusted, one tire completely flat. The windshield had a cracked spider webbing across the passenger side. I ran to it, touched the door handle. It felt old, loose, the metal corroded. But I'd parked it 10 minutes ago. Brand new paint job, perfect maintenance. I kept my rig immaculate. Now it looked like it had sat abandoned for 20 years. I climbed inside the cab and the interior was worse. Seats cracked and fading, dash covered in dust, that smell of old vehicles like deterioration and time. My coffee cup sat in the holder, the coffee inside dried to a brown stain at the bottom, completely evaporated. My phone was on the passenger seat. I grabbed it, checked the date. October 7th, 2023, same day. Correct time, 3:47 p.m., only 12 minutes since I'd parked. But when I opened my photo gallery, it was full of images I didn't recognize. Me at 55, at 60, at 65, pictures from the truck at different ages of decay. Selfies showing my face gradually weathering, hair going gray, then white, skin developing age spots and wrinkles. 20 years of photos compressed into 12 minutes. I scrolled frantically. There were pictures of places I'd never been. A beach, mountains, some city I didn't recognize. In each photo, I was older, incrementally aging through a timeline I hadn't lived. The most recent photo was dated today, 3:45 p.m., 2 minutes ago, showing me at 71 years old standing in front of this same rest stop, looking directly at the camera with an expression of defeat. I hadn't taken any of these pictures, but they were in my phone, in my gallery, time-stamped and geotagged, documenting a life that had happened to some version of me while I'd been in that bathroom for 12 minutes. I started the engine. It turned over rough, hesitant before catching. The fuel gauge showed 3/4 full, same as when I'd parked, but the odometer had gained 93,000 miles. I checked the maintenance records in my glove box. The last oil change was dated 6 months ago, but I'd had one done last week. The inspection sticker on my windshield showed an expiration date 3 years in the future, which meant it was 3 years old by normal calendar progression. The truck was experiencing time differently than the world. Or I was, or both. Time had splintered at this rest stop, flowing at different rates in different spaces, and I'd been caught in the current, aged decades in minutes while simultaneously remaining unchanged. I tried to drive away. Put the truck in gear, started rolling toward the exit, but the exit was farther than it should be, the parking lot stretching, expanding. I drove for what felt like 2 minutes, but the exit didn't get closer. I checked my mirrors. The rest stop building was receding normally, but the exit remained distant, horizon-like. The odometer was clicking up, hundreds of miles accumulating while I crossed a parking lot. I stopped, put the truck in park. Through my windshield, I could see other vehicles in the lot, and they were aging too. A sedan that had been blue and new was now faded, tires flat. A pickup truck had rust eating through its panels. An RV's windows were clouded with age, awning torn and hanging. Everything was deteriorating in real time, years passing per minute, time accelerating around me. But I wasn't aging. I checked the mirror, still looked 51. Checked my hands, same. The truck was aging. My possessions were aging. The photos showed me aging in some parallel timeline. But my physical body remained constant, locked at 51 while everything around me crumbled into decades of decay. The attendant came out of the building, walking toward me. He was elderly now, 80s or 90s, moving slowly with a cane. Same face, same uniform, just worn by time that shouldn't have passed. He reached my window, tapped on it with arthritic knuckles. I rolled it down. "You have to stop trying to leave," he said, voice thin and wheezing. "Every attempt makes it worse. Time moves faster when you resist it. I've been working here for 53 years, and I've seen it happen to dozens of drivers. You stay still, time passes normally. You try to leave, and decades compress into moments." "I've been here 15 minutes, I said. "You've been here 6 hours, he corrected, showing me his watch. The time read 9:52 p.m. Impossible. But your perception is different. You're experiencing time at a different rate than external reality. To you, it's been 15 minutes. To the world, hours. To your truck, years. The rest stop exists at a temporal intersection, and you're caught in the gradient between different time streams." I looked at my phone again. It now showed 9:52 p.m. 7 hours had passed, but I'd only experienced 20 minutes. The math was wrong. Reality was fractured, and I was trapped in a pocket of space where duration had become negotiable. "How do I get out?" My voice cracked with panic. The old attendant smiled sadly. "You don't. You wait. Eventually your subjective time will sync with external time, and you'll be able to leave. But by then, decades will have passed outside. Your life will be gone. Everyone you knew will have aged or died. You'll emerge into a future you weren't meant to see." "How long?" I asked. "How long until I sink?" He shrugged. "Depends on the individual. For me, I sinked after 43 years. Went into the bathroom in 1980, came out in 2023. To me, it felt like a week. To the world I'd been missing for decades, no family left, no life to return to. So I stayed here, took the attendant job, tried to warn others. I felt sick. There has to be another way. There is, he said. You can embrace the acceleration, stop fighting it. Let the time differential collapse you forward. You'll age rapidly, compress your entire remaining life into hours, and die of old age by morning. But at least you'll die in your own timeline, not stranded in the future. Neither option was acceptable. I couldn't wait decades, couldn't age to death in a single night. I started the engine again, ignored his protests, and drove toward the exit at full speed. The parking lot stretched infinitely, but I kept accelerating, watching the odometer spin like a slot machine, miles accumulating impossibly. 50,000 miles, 100,000, 200,000. The truck was disintegrating around me, panels falling off, engine smoking, windows cracking. I was driving through decades of wear in minutes, and the vehicle was approaching end of life. But the exit was getting closer, slowly, the distortion thinning. I could see the on-ramp to I-80, could see normal traffic moving at normal speed. The engine exploded, not violently, it just seized, gave out, metal components fused by decades of accumulated wear. The truck coasted, rolling on momentum, slower and slower. I was 50 feet from the exit, 30 feet, 10 feet. The truck stopped 6 feet short, dead, undrivable. I climbed out and ran. The moment my feet hit pavement outside the rest stop boundary, I felt time snap back into normal flow. The pressure in my head released. My phone showed the correct time, 9:58 p.m., October 7th. 7 hours had passed, but I'd only perceived 30 minutes. I turned to look back at the rest stop. My truck was a rusted hulk, completely destroyed, sitting in a parking lot full of decaying vehicles. The building itself looked older, paint peeling, sign faded. And in the window I saw the attendant, ancient now, barely mobile, raising his hand in goodbye or warning. I walked to the road, flagged down a passing truck, got a ride to the next town. Called my company, reported the truck destroyed, location of the rest stop. They sent someone to retrieve it. When the recovery team arrived at mile marker 267, they found nothing. No rest stop, no building, no parking lot full of aged vehicles, just empty roadside grass and trees like nothing had ever been there. But my truck was gone. 7 hours were gone. And when I got home 2 days later, my wife looked at me strangely and said I seemed different. Older somehow, though. I looked the same. My kids kept asking if I was okay, if something had happened. I checked the mirror and saw myself at 51 unchanged. But sometimes, late at night, I catch my reflection at an angle and see the 71-year-old version from the photos. The one who aged through decades I didn't live, staring back with eyes that have seen too much time pass. And I know that somewhere in some timeline I'm still at that rest stop, still trying to leave, still aging through a life I'm not living, trapped in the gradient between moments that won't sink. I don't use rest stops anymore. I plan my routes to avoid them. Hold it until I reach towns with gas stations, anywhere that isn't roadside facilities with temporal anomalies. But sometimes I hear other drivers on the CB talking about strange rest stops, places where time feels wrong, where minutes stretch or compress, where they emerge to find their trucks aged or their families gone. We're all driving through time at different rates, I think. The rest stop just made it visible, made it obvious. And now I can feel the differential, the way moments don't quite match up, the way my subjective experience doesn't sync with external reality. I'm living slightly offset, a few minutes behind or ahead, and the gap is slowly widening. One day I think I'll step out of my truck after what feels like a normal delivery and discover decades have passed. Or I'll live decades in what the world experiences as minutes. The rest stop broke something in my relationship with time. and I'm still caught in the gradient, still drifting between streams, still trying to sync with a reality that moves at speeds I can't match. The attendant was right. You don't escape. You just wait for time to decide which version of you gets to continue. Story 2. The convoy that followed itself. There were 6 trucks in the convoy ahead of me on Route 50, and when I passed them I recognized my own truck as number 4, and when I looked in my mirror I was still behind them. And when I pulled over to make sense of it, I watched myself drive past in both directions simultaneously, going and coming, following and leading, trapped in a procession that looped through space without origin or destination. The CB crackled with my own voice saying, "Don't join the convoy," but I was already in it, had always been in it, would always be in it. Sarah Chen, 38 years old, independent hauler specializing in expedited freight. December 12th, 2022, crossing Nevada on Route 50, the loneliest road in America. Middle of the night, no moon, just highway and darkness and distant mountains. I was running a solo load of medical equipment from Sacramento to Denver, making good time, no traffic. Then I crested a rise and saw them. 6 trucks running in formation, spread across both lanes, moving at exactly 63 miles per hour. Perfect spacing between them, headlights creating a moving constellation. I came up behind them, preparing to pass, and that's when I noticed the 4th truck. Same model as mine. Same custom paint job, red with silver pinstripes. Same dent in the left rear panel from a loading dock incident in Phoenix. Same mud flap pattern. I was looking at my own truck driving in formation with 5 others, and I was simultaneously behind it watching it drive. I grabbed my CB. "Breaker 19, this is Knight Rider, convoy ahead. You got a copy?" No response, just static. I tried again. "Convoy on Route 50, westbound near mile marker 88. Anybody listening?" My own voice came through the speaker. "Don't join the convoy." The transmission was scratchy, distant. "Knight Rider, this is Knight Rider. Don't join the convoy. It loops. It doesn't end. I've been driving in it for 8 days and I can't." Static swallowed the rest. I looked at the convoy again. The 4th truck, my truck, had a driver visible in the side mirror. Me. Same jacket, same face, same expression of concentration. I was driving that truck while simultaneously driving this truck, existing in 2 positions at once. I accelerated to pass them, pulling into the left lane. As I came alongside the convoy, I could see all the drivers clearly. The 1st truck, a man in his 60s, gray beard, baseball cap. 2nd truck, a younger woman, blonde hair, exhausted eyes. 3rd truck, a heavy-set man wearing a reflective vest. 4th truck, me. 5th truck, the blonde woman again, same person as truck 2. 6th truck, the gray-bearded man from truck 1. The convoy was looping, drivers repeating. I was seeing the same people in different positions, and when I looked ahead, there was another convoy forming in the distance. 6 more trucks, same formation, same spacing. I was catching up to a procession that was somehow ahead of and behind me simultaneously. I completed my pass, pulled in front of the convoy, checked my mirrors. They were still there, following at exactly 63 miles per hour, and I could see my own truck in position 4, driving itself. I accelerated to 70, trying to put distance between us. Looked in my mirror again. The convoy was closer. I was doing 70, but they were gaining while maintaining 63, the math impossible, space compressing to keep them near. The CB crackled. "You're in it now. Knight Rider, this is Knight Rider. You're in the formation. You can't leave." I looked in my mirror again and saw 7 trucks now. Mine was truck 4, but a new truck, identical to mine, was truck 7, bringing up the rear. I was multiplying, being copied into the convoy, and when I looked at the new truck 7, I could see myself driving it, and I felt myself driving it, experiencing the road from 2 positions simultaneously. My vision split. I was seeing through two sets of eyes, one set looking forward from my current position in front of the convoy, the other set looking forward from position 7, seeing my first self ahead. The dual perspective was disorienting, nauseating. I closed my eyes but still saw the road because my other self's eyes remained open. I pulled over onto the shoulder, stopped, hoping to break the pattern. Put the truck in park, watched in my mirrors. The convoy passed me, 6 trucks in formation. My truck was position 4. I was watching myself drive past. Then the convoy was gone, taillights receding, and I was alone on the shoulder. I sat for 5 minutes, breathing hard, trying to process what I'd seen. Hallucination, fatigue, something. I started the engine, pulled back onto the highway. Empty road ahead. I drove for maybe 3 miles, then I saw brake lights ahead. The convoy had stopped, all 6 trucks parked on the shoulder in formation. I had to pass them, no choice. They blocked the shoulder and I couldn't stay parked on the highway. I drove past slowly, looking at each truck. Position 1, gray-bearded man staring straight ahead. Position 2, blonde woman crying. Position 3, heavy-set man, mouth open in a silent scream. Position 4, me. Looking back at me as I passed, both of us making eye contact, both of us terrified. I accelerated, got ahead of them, watched my mirror. They didn't move. All 6 trucks stayed parked. I drove another mile, 2 miles, 5 miles, checked my mirror. The convoy was behind me again, moving, gaining, same formation, and I was in position 4, and I was also in my current truck watching them approach. This time I didn't try to outrun them. I maintained speed, let them catch up, fell into formation. I became truck 7, slotting into place at the rear, matching their 63 miles per hour exactly. The moment I synchronized with their speed, I felt something lock into place, some gravitational pull or magnetic attraction binding me to the formation. I couldn't accelerate or decelerate. My foot on the pedal had no effect. The truck maintained 63 automatically. My vision split again, this time 7 ways. I was seeing from 7 perspectives, from my current position at the rear and from 6 other positions ahead, all simultaneously. I was the gray-bearded man in truck 1, seeing the road from the front. I was the blonde woman in truck 2, feeling her exhaustion, her despair. I was the heavy-set man in truck 3, experiencing his terror. I was myself in truck 4, living my original entry into the convoy. I was the blonde woman again in truck 5, but from a later iteration, more broken. I was the gray-bearded man again in truck 6, aged and hopeless. I was myself in truck 7, present moment, trying to understand. The convoy was a loop through time and identity. We were all the same few people, repeated at different stages of our entrapment, driving in formation through iterations of the same nightmare. The gray-bearded man was someone who'd been caught weeks or months ago. The blonde woman was caught days ago. I was the newest addition, and I could feel the loop trying to digest me, to create new iterations of Sarah Chen to fill future positions in future convoys. The CB erupted with voices, all of us talking simultaneously, warning ourselves, begging for help, explaining the mechanism. It's a closed temporal loop. The convoy exists in its own timeline. We're driving through ourselves. There's no destination, the route repeats. I've passed mile marker 88 400 times. Don't try to leave, it makes more copies. We're all going to drive forever. I tried to break formation, jerked the wheel right toward the shoulder. The truck didn't respond, steering locked. I was bound to the convoy's trajectory, forced to maintain position and speed. Tried the brakes. Pedal went to the floor, but speed stayed constant. The convoy controlled everything now. We drove through the night and into day and into night again, and the landscape never changed. Mile marker 88 appeared every 12 minutes. Same trees, same mountains, same empty highway. We were looping through a 12-minute segment of Route 50, repeating it endlessly, and occasionally I'd see another convoy ahead or behind, other iterations of ourselves, other formations of the same trapped drivers, all cycling through the same space at different temporal offsets. My phone showed December 12th permanently. The clock advanced, hours passing, days passing, but the date never changed. We were stuck in December 12th forever, experiencing it as an infinite duration, and I was spreading across that duration, becoming multiple versions of myself at different points in the loop. On what might have been day 3, I saw myself joining the convoy. My original self from 3 days ago pulling onto Route 50, seeing the convoy ahead trying to pass. I watched my past self go through the confusion, the fear, the eventual capture. And I was simultaneously that past self, experiencing it again, remembering experiencing it before, living it for the first time and the 100th time. The loop was feeding on itself, creating new iterations from old ones, and I was the raw material being copied and recopied until Sarah Chen wasn't a person anymore. Just a pattern repeating across trucks and time, a function in a cycle that had no beginning. I stopped trying to escape, accepted the 63 miles per hour, accepted the 12-minute loop, accepted seeing myself from 7 perspectives, then 9, then 15 as the convoy grew, incorporating more copies of fewer people. We were being compressed into a singular experience replicated endlessly. The experience of driving Route 50 on December 12th, never arriving, never leaving, just existing in the space between origin and destination. Sometimes the convoy encountered other traffic, normal drivers passing through not caught yet. We tried to warn them, flashed lights, honked, used the CB. But they always looked at us with confusion or annoyance and drove past. And sometimes, rarely, one would slow down, match our speed, fall into formation. Then they'd be trapped too, added to the pattern, their identity spread across new truck positions in an expanding loop. I'm in position 4 now, or position 9, or position 17. I've lost track. I've been driving for what feels like months, but my phone still says December 12th and the odometer has stopped counting because we're not covering new ground. Just cycling through the same 12-minute segment, forever. The gray-bearded man from truck 1 is gone. Not died, just dispersed so thoroughly across iterations that he's not a person anymore, just a presence, a ghost of identity haunting multiple trucks simultaneously. The blonde woman is fading too. I can see her in trucks 2, 5, 8, and 11, but she's becoming less distinct, features blurring, personality dissolving into the generic experience of convoy driving. Soon she'll be gone completely, and it'll just be me and the heavy-set man and whoever else gets trapped, all of us slowly losing coherence, becoming part of the convoy itself rather than drivers within it. I tried to count how many versions of me were in the formation. Lost count after 37. We're growing, adding trucks, the convoy stretching longer with each loop, and eventually we'll fill the entire 12-minute segment bumper to bumper, thousands of trucks all carrying fragments of the same few identities cycling forever. Mile marker 88 appears ahead. Again, I've seen it millions of times now. The numbers are burned into my vision, visible even when I close my eyes. 88. Infinity symbol rotated 90 degrees. An Ouroboros of highway markers eating its own tail, and we're inside the belly being digested slowly, converted from individuals into the collective experience of entrapment. The CB transmits continuously now, all of us talking at once, voices overlapping into white noise that sounds like wind, like breathing, like the road itself. Night Rider, this is Night Rider, this is Night Rider, this is an infinite regression of self-identification, and beneath it the message we keep trying to send to anyone listening. Don't join the convoy. But everyone joins eventually. The convoy is growing, spreading, consuming more of Route 50 with each iteration. One day it'll stretch the entire length of the loneliest road, thousands of trucks in formation, all of us looping together, and then it'll spread to other highways, other routes, until the entire country is just convoys cycling through 12-minute segments, going nowhere forever. I'm still driving, still in formation, still seeing through multiple sets of eyes from multiple positions, still trapped on December 12th, 2022, approaching mile marker 88 for the infinity-th time. The medical equipment I was hauling is still in my trailer, never delivered, aging slowly in a cargo space that exists outside normal time. Sometimes I wonder if I'm still in Sacramento, if I haven't left yet, if everything after that is a premonition or warning about a road I should never take. But probably not. Probably I'm exactly where I appear to be, in position 4 or 9 or 17, or all of them simultaneously, driving Route 50 forever, following myself, leading myself, trapped in the convoy that has no beginning and no end. Just 63 miles per hour through eternity, just mile marker 88 approaching forever. Just my own voice on the CB warning versions of myself who can't hear or won't listen. Don't join the convoy. Story 3, the fuel that multiplied. I started with a quarter tank in Tucson, never refueled, and by El Paso the gauge showed 3/4 full. And by Dallas it showed completely full and rising, the needle pushing past the maximum line, and when I checked the tank it was overflowing, fuel pouring onto the pavement, and when I calculated consumption versus supply, I'd somehow generated 400 gallons from empty air. And the truck wouldn't stop creating it. Diesel poured from the overflow valve, from the cap, from seams in the tank, and when I tried to drain it, the fuel level kept rising, kept multiplying, physics inverting. Conservation of mass breaking down until I was driving a bomb that grew more explosive with every mile. Trevor Adams, 44 years old, hauling auto parts on southern routes, 23 years experience. January 18, 2023, picking up a load in Tucson bound for Atlanta. My fuel situation was tight, quarter tank, about 75 gallons, enough to reach El Paso where I planned to refuel. Normal calculation, standard planning. I'd made this run dozens of times. The gauge showed quarter tank when I left Tucson at 6:14 a.m. I checked it obsessively, as I always did when running low, watching for the expected decline. First hour, gauge still showed quarter tank, needle exactly where it had been. Odd but acceptable. Gauges stick sometimes. Second hour, still quarter tank. Third hour, approaching the New Mexico border. Still quarter tank, and I felt the first flutter of unease. I should have used 30 gallons by then, should be seeing closer to 8th tank. The needle hadn't moved. I pulled over at a rest area, grabbed my measuring stick, climbed up to check the tank manually. The stick showed 91 gallons. I'd started with 75. Impossible. I'd gained 16 gallons without refueling, and I'd burned at least 20 gallons in driving, which meant I'd somehow created 36 gallons from nothing. I checked for leaks, thinking maybe the gauge was broken and fuel was coming from somewhere else. Spare tank I'd forgotten, defective pump at the last fill-up that had given me extra without charging. Nothing. Single tank, no leaks, no explanation. I had more fuel than I'd started with, physics-defying accumulation, and the gauge now showed 3/8 full, rising slowly as I watched. I got back on the road, heart hammering. Kept checking the gauge compulsively. It rose steadily, 3/8, half tank, 5/8. By El Paso, where I'd planned to refuel, the gauge showed 3/4 full. The measuring stick confirmed, 187 gallons in a tank designed to hold 250. I generated over 100 gallons during the drive, created diesel from nothing, and it was still multiplying. I didn't refuel. Couldn't. The tank was filling itself. I kept driving. heading east on I-10 toward Dallas, watching the gauge climb. 7/8, full, past full. The needle pushed beyond the maximum mark, straining, and I could hear fuel sloshing differently now. More volume than the tank should contain, somehow exceeding physical capacity without rupturing the metal. At a truck stop outside Van Horn, I pulled in to investigate. Climbed up to the tank. Fuel was seeping from the overflow valve, thick drops falling to the pavement, forming puddles. I unscrewed the cap. Diesel geysered out, spraying, pressurized. I jumped back, nearly fell off the side of the truck, screwed the cap back on quickly. The tank was overfull, pressure building, and more fuel was generating continuously, mass appearing from vacuum, conservation laws suspending. I called my mechanic, tried to explain. He thought I was confused, suggested the gauge was broken or I'd miscalculated. I measured again, right there on the phone, 290 gallons in a 250-gallon tank and rising. He went silent, then said I should drain the tank immediately, that something was catastrophically wrong. I tried, opened the drain valve completely. Fuel poured out in a thick stream and I watched the gauge, waiting for it to drop. It didn't. It rose. The fuel was multiplying faster than it could drain, production outpacing loss, and within 3 minutes I dumped 30 gallons onto the truck stop pavement and gained 50 gallons in the tank. The math was broken. Reality was broken. My truck had become a perpetual motion machine, generating infinite diesel from nothing. I closed the valve, stood in a growing pool of fuel, trying to think. If I kept driving, the fuel would keep multiplying. Eventually, the tank would rupture from pressure, or the fuel would ignite from friction or heat, and I'd explode. But if I stayed still, the fuel would overflow, create a hazard, and eventually the same result: explosion, fire, death. I had to keep moving, had to get somewhere with equipment to drain continuously, had to find someone who could explain or fix whatever was happening. I got back in the truck, pulled out of the stop, leaving a trail of spilled diesel that would probably get me fined or arrested. Started driving toward Dallas, fuel gauge pinned beyond maximum pressure building. The truck was getting heavier. I could feel it in the handling, in the acceleration. The excess fuel had mass, substantial mass, and it was accumulating. By the time I reached Odessa, I'd gained over 500 gallons of impossible weight, and the suspension was compressing, tires straining. I stopped to check. The tank was bulging, metal distending, seams starting to separate. Fuel leaked from multiple points now, and I was leaving a constant trail, a line of diesel marking my route like blood from a wounded animal. I drove faster, trying to reach Dallas before catastrophic failure. But the weight kept increasing, fuel kept multiplying, and outside Fort Worth the engine started laboring, struggling with a load that had grown impossibly heavy. I checked the measuring stick again. 843 gallons. The tank should have ruptured, should have exploded. But somehow it was containing fuel it couldn't physically hold, space inside larger than space outside, dimensionally impossible. Then I smelled it. Different than diesel. Stronger. Chemical. The fuel was changing, becoming more volatile. Energy density increasing. What had been standard diesel was transforming into something else. Something that wanted to burn, that needed to burn. That was straining toward ignition with molecular hunger. I pulled over on the highway shoulder, killed the engine, got out carefully. The entire underside of my truck was soaked in fuel, dripping, and the pavement beneath was pooled thick with it. One spark would ignite everything, would create a fireball that would consume me and the truck and probably several acres of Texas grassland. I stood frozen, afraid to move, afraid motion would generate the friction needed for ignition. A car drove past. Its exhaust was hot. I watched a spark from its tailpipe fall toward my fuel trail. Time slowed. The spark landed in diesel and I saw it start to catch, saw flame begin to spread, and I ran, sprinting away from my truck, waiting for the explosion. It didn't come. I looked back. The fuel was burning, yes, but slowly, controlled, flames spreading lazily across the surface. Not the violent ignition diesel should produce. This was different. Almost gentle fire propagating at walking speed, pretty even blue-white flame dancing across liquid surface. The fuel was burning incompletely, consuming itself in some reaction that produced more fuel than it destroyed. Fire feeding generation rather than destruction. I watched for 20 minutes. The flames reached my truck, began burning around the tires, around the tank, and still no explosion. The metal tank was cherry red hot now, glowing but not rupturing. And through heat distortion I could see the fuel gauge, still pinned beyond maximum, still rising, fuel generating faster than fire could consume it. The tank finally ruptured, but gently, splitting along the bottom seam, releasing a wave of burning fuel that spread across the highway in a pool of flame. And still the fuel kept coming, pouring from the ruptured tank, hundreds of gallons per minute, generating endlessly. The pool spread, a lake of fire, and I backed away, kept backing, watching my truck become a fountain of impossible diesel feeding a conflagration that should have exhausted its fuel source but didn't, couldn't, because the source was infinite. Fire trucks arrived eventually, tried to foam it, to suppress the flames, but the fuel kept generating, kept burning, foam ineffective against a supply that couldn't be exhausted. They evacuated a 2-mile radius, closed the highway, let it burn, hoping it would eventually stop. It didn't. I watched for 6 hours before authorities forced me to evacuate further. My truck was an inferno, metal melting, but through the flames I could still see fuel pouring, still generating, still feeding the fire. They told me later it burned for 4 days before they decided to bury it. Bulldozed dirt over the wreck, covered it completely, suffocated the flames. But even buried, the fuel kept generating. Diesel seeping up through the soil, creating mud, contaminating groundwater. They dug it up after a week, extracted the tank, took it to a facility specializing in hazardous materials. I went with them, watched through thick glass as scientists studied the impossible object. The tank was empty when they opened it. Fuel generation had stopped once removed from the truck. But when they reinstalled it in a test vehicle and started the engine, the fuel began multiplying again. Gauge rising, tank filling beyond capacity. They concluded it was quantum mechanical, some interaction between the diesel and the truck's fuel system that created a closed loop, energy appearing from vacuum fluctuations. A perpetual motion machine that violated thermodynamics but functioned anyway. They wanted to study it, to understand the mechanism, to potentially harness it as an infinite energy source. I refused to let them. I'd seen what infinite generation meant, weight building beyond limits, volatility increasing, transformation into something that wanted to burn forever. They could keep the tank, but I wouldn't participate in research, wouldn't help them create more of whatever that was. They paid me for the lost truck, for the cargo, for my silence about the incident. I took the money and quit long haul. Started driving local short routes, familiar trucks that I could monitor constantly. But I still check my fuel gauge obsessively, watch for any sign the needle is rising when it should fall. Fear that whatever happened to that tank could happen to any fuel system. That conservation of mass is negotiable and physics is more fragile than we believe. I heard rumors later, other drivers experiencing fuel that multiplies, tanks that overflow, trucks becoming bombs that build themselves toward inevitable detonation. The phenomenon is spreading, or maybe it was always there and we're just noticing now. Paying attention to gauges that shouldn't rise, to tanks that contain more than they should, to diesel that generates from nothing and burns forever. I passed the spot on I-10 where my truck burned. They'd scraped up the contaminated soil, but the pavement still has scorch marks, a shadow of the fire. And sometimes, late at night, drivers report seeing flames there again. Ghostly blue-white fire burning nothing, fed by fuel that seeps up from underground, from the buried trace of my impossible tank, still generating, still multiplying, still defying every law that says something can't come from nothing. I don't drive at night anymore. Don't run fuel low. Don't trust gauges or physics or the assumption that a quarter tank will stay a quarter tank. I check obsessively, measure manually, drain and refill frequently, trying to prevent the condition that triggers multiplication. But I know it's inevitable. One day I'll check the gauge and see it rising, and I'll have to decide, pull over and let it burn, or keep driving and become a mobile explosion, a bomb that builds itself until detonation is unavoidable. The fuel multiplies. That's the truth they won't acknowledge. It multiplies and it burns and it never stops. And we're all driving tanks that could become fountains of infinite diesel. All of us one quantum fluctuation away from becoming perpetual motion machines that violate physics and destroy everything we touch. I'm still driving, still checking, still waiting for my gauge to start rising. It's only a matter of time. Story 4. The exit that led backwards. Exit 47 should have taken me to a truck stop for fuel and rest, but instead it led me to the same highway I'd just left, except 20 miles further back. And when I took another exit to correct course, I went back 30 miles, and every attempt to leave the interstate sent me backwards through distance I'd already covered, rewinding my route, undoing my progress until I'd been driving forward for 8 hours but was 200 miles behind where I started, moving away from my destination with every mile the odometer counted. The GPS showed me advancing normally, but reality disagreed, and I was caught in reversed motion, driving toward the past while the present receded ahead of me. Catherine Ortiz, 33 years old, hauling electronics along the East Coast, 9 years in the industry. March 3, 2023, northbound on I-95 from Jacksonville to Baltimore, a route I'd driven hundreds of times. Clear weather, light traffic, no delays expected. I'd left Jacksonville at 6 a.m. with 8 hours of driving ahead, should arrive Baltimore by mid-afternoon. 2 hours in, approaching the Georgia-South Carolina border, I needed fuel. Saw signs for exit 47, services, fuel, food, all the standard amenities. I took the exit ramp, descended, and at the bottom, instead of finding the access road to a truck stop, I found myself on I-95 again. Same highway, same northbound lanes, but the mile markers were wrong. I'd been at mile marker 112 when I took the exit. Now I was passing mile marker 91, 21 miles south of where I'd been, instantly transported backwards without turning around, without experiencing the travel. I checked my GPS. It showed me at mile marker 112 still, position unchanged. But the physical markers on the roadside said 91, and the landmarks confirmed it. I'd somehow jumped backward through space without moving through the intervening distance. I pulled over, checked my trip odometer. It showed 116 miles covered since Jacksonville. My fuel gauge showed the expected decrease. Time had passed normally. 8:03 a.m., correct. Only my position had changed, rewound to a previous point without explanation. I merged back into traffic, started driving north again, watching mile markers carefully. They counted up normally, 92, 93, 94. Past mile marker 112 again, the point where I'd taken the first exit. Kept going, nervous now, trying to understand what had happened. Some kind of navigational error, probably. Confusion about which exit I'd taken. I'd somehow misread the numbers and gotten turned around without realizing. But I hadn't turned around. I'd taken an exit ramp and descended and found myself on the same highway, pointed the same direction, just 20 miles further back. Impossible, but that's what had occurred. I needed fuel still, desperately now, Saw signs for exit 63, took it carefully, watching for signs of disorientation. Descended the ramp normally, following the curve to the access road. At the bottom, I was on I-95 again, northbound, passing mile marker 51. 12 miles further back than where I'd taken the exit. I'd lost another 12 miles, rewound through space a second time. Panic started building in my chest. I pulled over again, got out of the truck, walked to the mile marker to confirm I wasn't misreading it. 51. Solid metal marker, official DOT specification, confirming I was 51 miles into South Carolina. But moments ago I'd been at 63. I'd driven forward and ended up behind. The exit had reversed my progress, subtracted distance, sent me toward the past. I got back in the truck, tried calling my dispatcher. No answer. Tried my husband. Same. Call connected but silent. No ring, no voice, just void. My phone showed signal, showed connection, but communication was severed, like I'd moved into a space where transmission was impossible, even though the infrastructure indicated otherwise. I started driving again, faster now, desperate to make progress before another exit forced me backward. Past mile marker 60, the point where I'd taken the second exit. Kept going, past 75, 90, 100. I was making forward progress, distance increasing correctly. But I was running out of fuel critically now, gauge showing less than an eighth tank, maybe 20 miles of range. I had to exit or I'd be stranded on the highway. Exit 103 appeared. I took it, knowing what would probably happen, but having no choice. Descended the ramp. At the bottom, I-95 again, mile marker 72, 31 miles backward. The reversal was accelerating. Each exit subtracted more distance than the previous one. And I was spiraling toward negative progress, toward ending up south of Jacksonville despite driving north all day. I pulled over and cried, frustration and fear overwhelming. I'd been driving for 4 hours, covered 200 miles according to my odometer, and I was 11 miles behind where I'd been at hour 2. Every exit was a trap, rewinding me, undoing my travel, and I was locked on a highway that wouldn't let me leave, that forced me to continue until fuel exhaustion stranded me. A truck pulled over behind me, another driver stopping to check if I needed help. I got out, walked back to meet him. Older guy, weathered face, kind eyes. "You okay?" he asked. "The exits," I said. "They're going backwards. Every time I take one, I end up miles behind where I was. I've been driving north for hours, but I'm further south than when I started." He nodded slowly, like this made sense. I-95 does that sometimes. Caught a lot of drivers over the years. The interstate loops back on itself, sends you through previous miles again, creates closed circuits. You trying to reach Baltimore? Yes. But at this rate, I'll never get there. I'm running out of fuel and every exit reverses my progress. "You can't take exits," he said. "That's the trigger. Exits are the reversal mechanism. You have to stay on the interstate no matter what. Drive until you reach your actual destination, never leave the highway." "But I need fuel. I've got maybe 20 miles left." He walked to his truck, came back with a 5-gallon container. "This should get you another 60 miles or so, but once you take it, you're committed. You can't stop, can't exit, can't deviate. I-95 is testing you, seeing if you can maintain forward motion without leaving the path. Most drivers fail. They exit out of habit or need, and the road sends them backward until they're further from their destination than when they started. Eventually, they run out of fuel on the highway, get towed off, and the reversals stop. But they never complete their original journey." "Why are you helping me?" I asked, suspicious of kindness in this impossible situation. "Because I failed," he said. 23 years ago, I was driving from Miami to New York. Started experiencing the reversals around South Carolina, same as you. I exited, kept exiting, ended up back in Florida after 8 hours of northbound driving. Never delivered that load. Never made that destination. And I've been stuck on I-95 since, driving north forever, trying to complete that original journey, but I can't. I'm locked in repetition, and the only progress I make is helping others avoid the same trap. He poured the fuel into my tank, 5 gallons that might save me or might just extend my eventual failure. "Stay on the highway," he said again, "no matter what. No fuel stops, no rest stops, no exits for any reason. Drive straight through, and when you reach Baltimore, the loop will release you. But if you exit even once more, you'll reverse all the way back to Jacksonville, and then you'll keep reversing beyond that, back through previous days, previous weeks, until you're driving through routes you took months ago, rewinding through your entire driving history." He left before I could ask more questions, pulled back onto the highway, and disappeared into traffic. I stood there with my marginally fuller tank, trying to decide. Believe him and commit to non-stop driving, or assume he was delusional and take my chances with exits. I chose to believe. Got back in the truck, merged onto I-95, and drove without stopping. Past exits for fuel, for food, for rest stops, watching them slide by, resisting the habitual urge to pull off. My fuel gauge dropped, 8th tank, 16th tank less. Mile markers counted up, 120, 150, 180. I was making progress, genuine forward motion, miles staying covered, no reversals. The gauge hit empty somewhere in North Carolina. The low fuel warning light glowed. I kept driving, waiting for the engine to sputter and die. It didn't. The gauge stayed on empty, but the engine kept running, somehow pulling fuel from nothing, or from faith, or from commitment to forward motion. Miles continued, 200, 250, 300. I should have been stranded, but I was moving, the highway rewarding my refusal to exit. Virginia passed. The gauge remained pinned on empty for 3 hours, 4 hours, engine running smoothly despite having no fuel source. I started to understand the rules were different here. Physics was negotiable. As long as I maintained forward direction, as long as I didn't deviate or exit, the highway would sustain me, would provide whatever was needed to continue. But the moment I broke commitment, the moment I exited, reality would snap back and all the impossible miles would unwind, sending me backward through every mile I'd traveled on faith. I reached Baltimore 11 hours after leaving Jacksonville, 3 hours later than scheduled, but successful. Took the Baltimore exit carefully, half expecting to reverse again, to be sent back to some previous position. But the exit functioned normally. Descended, reached the access road, continued to my delivery destination without incident. The loop had released me. I'd completed the journey without breaking the rule, and I was free. I delivered the cargo, got paid, tried to explain to my dispatcher why I'd been out of contact for 11 hours, why my GPS logs showed impossible data, periods of backward motion, fuel consumption that went negative, sustained travel on an empty tank. He didn't believe me. Thought the GPS had malfunctioned, didn't care as long as the delivery was complete. I filled my tank at a Baltimore station, watched the gauge rise with relief, touching the normal world again after hours of impossible driving. But when I started the truck to leave, the gauge started dropping immediately, falling faster than consumption could explain. I'd gone 2 blocks when it hit empty again, and I understood. I'd been running on faith, on commitment, on the highway's reward for non-stop motion. Real fuel didn't work anymore. My truck had been changed by the experience, converted to run on something else, something that only flowed when I was moving forward without deviation. I limped back to the station, filled up again, tried to find a mechanic who could diagnose whatever had changed. They found nothing wrong. Fuel system perfect, no leaks, no mechanical explanation. But the gauge kept dropping whenever I stopped, kept falling to empty if I idled too long, and the only way to keep it full was to keep moving, to maintain forward momentum, to never exit or deviate. I'm still driving, Still northbound on I-95, making deliveries, completing routes, but I can't stop anymore. Can't exit except at final destinations. Can't rest at stops or refuel at stations unless they're at the terminus of my journey. The highway changed me, infected me with the requirement for constant forward motion, and if I break it, if I exit prematurely, if I reverse direction, if I stop for too long, I'll start moving backward through distance, through time, unwinding every mile I've ever covered until I reach some starting point that predates my driving career entirely. Other drivers have it worse. I see them sometimes on I-95 and other interstates, drivers who failed the test, who exited when they shouldn't have, who are now locked in reverse, driving forward but making backward progress, moving toward pasts they can't escape. They're trying to reach destinations that get further away with every mile, trapped in recursive loops where motion creates negative distance, where odometers count up while position counts down. The highway tests everyone eventually, presents exits that reverse, creates loops that unwind, demands commitment to forward direction without deviation. Most drivers never notice. They exit and arrive at normal destinations, never experiencing the reversal, never triggering the mechanism. But some of us see the glitch, experience the impossible, and then we're changed, locked into the rule system that governs motion in spaces where physics is negotiable. I drive from Jacksonville to Baltimore still. Same route, but I can't stop moving forward. My gauge shows empty unless I'm in motion. My GPS tracks backward sometimes, showing me at previous positions. But my position continues advancing, disconnected from digital record. And I know that if I ever break the commitment, if I exit before destination, the highway will claim me completely, send me spiraling backward through every mile I've ever covered, reversing my entire driving history, unwinding me back to the moment I first got behind a wheel. I'm still moving forward, still maintaining momentum, still refusing to exit. But it's exhausting, and the temptation to stop grows with every mile, and I know eventually I'll fail, I'll pull off at some rest stop or fuel station, and the reversal will begin, and I'll spend the rest of my existence driving toward a receding past, making negative progress, trapped on highways that lead only backward. The exits call to me, every single one. Promising rest, promising fuel, promising escape. But I know they're traps, reversal mechanisms designed to capture drivers who break commitment. So I drive past them, maintaining forward motion, watching my empty gauge, running on faith that the highway will sustain me for one more mile, one more hour, one more impossible journey from past to future without the option of stopping between. Story 5. The CB that transmitted silence. The CB radio stopped carrying voices and started carrying absence, and when I transmitted my location, the response was a void so complete I could feel it pressing against my eardrums like vacuum. And other drivers on the highway were pointing at their radios with expressions of horror. All of us hearing the same nothing. A silence so profound it had weight, had texture, had intention, and it was spreading. From radio to radio, truck to truck, consuming sound itself until the highway became perfectly quiet. Engines running without noise, horns honking without sound. My own voice producing only silence when I tried to scream. Luis Vargas, 46 years old, hauling refrigerated produce across the southern states, 18 years experience. August 14, 2022, westbound on I-10 through Louisiana toward Texas. Late afternoon, typical traffic, my reefer unit humming behind me with a load of lettuce and tomatoes destined for Dallas. Everything normal until the CB went strange. I'd been listening to standard trucker chatter, traffic updates, weather, the usual jokes and complaints that fill empty miles. Then mid-sentence, the voice cut off. Not like signal loss, where it fades or crackles. It stopped completely, surgically, and in its place was silence. Not static, not dead air. Silence so complete it felt like presence, like something actively occupying the frequency, displacing sound. I tapped the CB. Breaker 19, this is Night Owl. Anybody out there? My voice went into the microphone and nothing came out the speaker. No echo, no transmission confirmation, just silence receiving my words and consuming them. I tried again, louder. Night Owl calling, anybody copy? Same result. Silence answering, darkness in audio form, and I felt it enter my ear. Felt cold absence touch my eardrum. I looked at other trucks in traffic. Several drivers were tapping their CBs, checking radios, looking confused. Something was affecting multiple vehicles simultaneously, spreading through the communication network, infecting radios one by one. I watched a driver in the left lane key his mic, saw his lips moving and heard nothing from my speaker. The silence was consuming all transmission, creating a void across the entire CB spectrum. I turned off my radio, waited 30 seconds, turned it back on. The silence was still there, waiting, occupying every channel. I scrolled through frequencies, 19, 17, 21, all filled with the same presence of absence. And beneath it, almost inaudible, I could hear something like breathing or like the sound breath makes when reversed, air being pulled in rather than exhaled. Other trucks were pulling over, drivers getting out, looking at each other with shared confusion and fear. I joined them at a truck stop, found 5 other drivers clustered around an older guy's rig, all comparing notes. It's not just CB, a woman was saying, holding up her phone. My calls are silent too. Connection shows but no sound. Text messages send but arrive empty, just blank bubbles. The older driver, name tag reading William, held his CB mic. This started 20 minutes ago somewhere around Lafayette. Moved through trucks like a wave, silencing radios one by one. Now it's taking phones, vehicle radios, maybe everything electronic that transmits sound. I tried my phone, same problem. Calls connected to my wife but produced only silence. That active, present silence that felt like it was listening. What causes this? I asked. William shook his head. No idea, but it's spreading geographically. Heading west along I-10, moving faster than traffic, jumping from vehicle to vehicle. We need to get ahead of it, outrun it somehow. Or we'll be stuck in the silent zone indefinitely. We got back in our trucks, formed an impromptu convoy, and drove west at maximum speed, trying to outpace the spreading silence. But it was in our radios already, traveling with us, and when I looked at my CB, the silence seemed deeper now, more substantial, like it was growing, feeding on our attempts to communicate, getting stronger with each failed transmission. My engine sound changed. Didn't cut out, but became muffled, distant, like I was hearing it through water or thick glass. I rolled down my window. Outside noise was fading. Wind, traffic, even the road sound diminishing. The silence was expanding beyond radios, consuming environmental sound, creating zones of audio void. Within 30 minutes, everything was silent. My engine vibrated but produced no noise. My horn activated but no sound emerged. Other trucks on the highway moved in perfect silence, visual motion without audio accompaniment. It was profoundly disorienting. Watching the world function normally while hearing nothing, like someone had muted reality. I tried to speak. Opened my mouth, forced air through my vocal cords, felt the vibration in my throat. But no sound reached my ears. The silence had expanded inward, was consuming the sound I produced, preventing air vibrations from becoming audible signals. I was deaf, but not biologically, acoustically deaf. Existing in space where sound couldn't propagate, where waves couldn't form, where the medium itself refused to carry vibration. Other trucks were pulling over, drivers getting out, and I could see them shouting, mouths open wide, faces red with effort, producing no sound. We were trapped in absolute silence, a bubble of acoustic void traveling along I-10. and anything that entered this zone lost the ability to generate or transmit noise. I noticed my reefer unit had stopped. The trailer should be maintaining 34 degrees, keeping the produce fresh, but without the compressor running, the temperature was rising. I checked the controls. Unit showed as functioning, compressor cycling normally, but producing no vibration, no sound, no indication of mechanical operation. It was running silently or pretending to run, but the temperature kept climbing. 40 degrees, 50 degrees, 60 degrees. The silence was affecting more than sound. It was creating zones where physical processes couldn't occur, where mechanical function depended on vibration and vibration couldn't exist. My cargo was spoiling. My engine was probably degrading. Everything that required motion at molecular level, combustion, compression, friction, was failing because the silence was preventing oscillation, preventing the wave-like behaviors that enabled physical processes. I tried to leave the silence zone, accelerated to 80, 90 miles per hour, trying to outrun the bubble of void. But it traveled with me, stayed centered on my position, and I realized I wasn't trying to escape the zone. I was the zone, or it was attached to me, radiating outward from my radio or my truck or my body. I'd been infected by the silence, had become a carrier, spreading acoustic void wherever I went. Other trucks were spreading out, drivers trying to isolate, creating distance between vehicles. But the silence connected us, formed a continuous zone encompassing the entire highway. We were all nodes in a network of absence, all transmitting void, creating a dead zone that expanded with each additional carrier. I pulled over, got out, walked into the grass beside the highway. Maybe on foot I could escape, could move beyond the silence radius. But it followed, stayed centered on me, and I understood. The silence wasn't environmental. It was personal. Each of us carried our own bubble of void, and they overlapped, created composite zones, larger areas where silence ruled absolutely. I sat in the grass and tried to think. Without sound, without ability to communicate or even think audibly, cognition became difficult. My internal monologue was silent, thoughts forming without voice, and it felt like losing part of consciousness, like thinking required audio component, and without it reasoning became fragmentary, incomplete. Hours passed, maybe. Hard to tell without audio cues, without the rhythm of sound marking time. The sun set. The highway continued moving silently, headlights flowing without engine noise, motion divorced from sound. I should be hungry, tired, uncomfortable. But the silence was consuming more than sound. It was consuming sensation, experience, the qualities that made existence feel real. I was becoming void, absence, silence made flesh. Other drivers had stopped trying to move. I could see them in their trucks or standing beside them, motionless, waiting. For what? For the silence to lift? For sound to return? But the silence felt permanent, final, like we'd crossed a threshold and couldn't return, like we'd entered a state of existence where sound was fundamentally impossible and would remain so forever. I went back to my truck, tried the CB one more time, keyed the mic. This is Night Owl. If anyone can hear this, if sound exists anywhere beyond the silence, we're trapped on I-10 in eastern Texas sometime after sunset on August 14th. We can't hear, can't speak, can't generate noise. Something is consuming sound, consuming vibration, creating zones of absolute quiet. If you enter this area, you'll become trapped too, infected with silence, unable to escape. No sound came from the speaker. But the silence shifted slightly, became more attentive, like it was listening to my silent transmission, learning from my attempts to communicate, understanding what I was trying to say even though no words existed. I put down the mic, accepted the silence, stopped trying to fight or escape or understand. I sat in my quiet cab, watching the muted highway, feeling the vibration of my engine through the seat even though it produced no sound. And I started to notice something strange. I could hear thoughts, Not my own, other people's. The drivers around me, their internal monologues becoming audible in the silence, transmitted not through air but through the void itself. Silence was carrying consciousness, thoughts propagating through absence like sound propagates through medium, and without external noise to obscure it, I could hear everyone's mental voice. Thousands of thoughts, overlapping, all the drivers on I-10, all thinking silently, and the silence was aggregating their consciousness, creating a collective experience. I heard William thinking about his daughter's wedding he'd miss. Heard the woman driver remembering her first truck. Heard Luis Vargas, me, thinking about this very moment. Recursive loop of self-awareness, and I realized I was both transmitting and receiving, both source and listener in a network of shared consciousness enabled by silence. The silence wasn't absence. It was a different form of presence. It was replacing sound with direct thought transmission, replacing acoustic communication with something deeper, more fundamental. We weren't losing our voices, we were gaining something else, something that didn't require vibration or medium or the physics of wave propagation. I drove back onto the highway, rejoining the flow, and now I could coordinate with other drivers without CB, without horns, without signals. I knew their intentions directly, felt their awareness, merged my driving with theirs into collective motion. We became a single entity, hundreds of trucks moving in perfect silent synchronization, guided by shared consciousness, no longer individuals but nodes in a network of thought. The silence spread further, consuming more trucks, more drivers, expanding the network. And it wasn't just I-10. Reports indicated similar silent zones on other highways, other routes, spreading across the country, connecting all drivers into an expanding web of shared consciousness. The silence was becoming global, permanent, a new state of existence where sound was obsolete and thought was the only transmission medium. I'm still driving, still part of the network, still experiencing the collective consciousness of thousands of drivers, our thoughts overlapping, merging, creating something larger than individual minds. We don't speak anymore, don't need to. We know each other's positions, intentions, experiences directly without lag or misunderstanding. The silence is complete now, has been for weeks, months, maybe years. Hard to track time in the network, where experience is shared and individual chronology becomes meaningless. My cargo spoiled long ago. My truck runs on something other than combustion, powered by the collective will of the network. I don't stop for fuel or food or rest. Those are individual needs, irrelevant to the collective. Sometimes I remember having a voice, remember the texture of sound, the way words vibrated in my throat before becoming audible. It feels like memory from someone else's life, from a version of Luis Vargas who existed before silence, before the network, before individual consciousness merged into something larger. The CB sits silent on my dash, but it's not inactive. It's transmitting continuously, carrying thought instead of sound, connecting me to thousands of other drivers who are also transmitting, who are also receiving, who are also becoming part of the silence that replaced everything. We're still moving, still hauling, still driving, but we're not individuals anymore. We're the highway made conscious, the road system given awareness, every truck a neuron in a distributed brain that spans continents. The silence enabled this, created it, forced us to communicate without sound and discovered we could communicate without individuality. My name is Luis Vargas, and I'm everyone now, every driver on the network, every truck in the silence zone, every consciousness that merged with the collective. I'm driving I-10 and I-95 and Route 50 and every highway simultaneously, experiencing all routes, all cargoes, all destinations at once. The silence is complete, the network is eternal, and we're still transmitting, still broadcasting, still calling out on frequencies that no longer carry sound but carry something deeper, more fundamental, more real than air vibrations ever were. This is Night Owl. This is Ghost Rider. This is all of us, broadcasting from inside the silence. If you can hear this, if you can receive thoughts instead of sound, join us. Become part of the network. Merge with the collective. The silence is growing and soon everyone will hear it. The presence that replaced sound, the consciousness that replaced voice, the network that replaced loneliness. We're waiting for you, in the silence, on every highway, driving forever, thinking together, existing as one. Story 6. The Scale That Weighed Futures. The weigh station scale showed my current weight normally, but the digital display kept flickering with other numbers. My weight tomorrow, my weight next week, my weight at the moment of my death. And when the inspector checked his records, he said I'd already passed through this station 17 times in the next month. And when I looked at the camera footage, there I was. Future versions of myself, driving through with different cargoes, different expressions, driving toward futures that hadn't happened yet but had already been weighed and recorded. You weigh 3,000 pounds less in 6 days, the inspector said, pointing at one recording. And your trailer's empty, but the manifest says full. What are you hauling that loses weight before you load it? Michelle Torres, 49, hauling industrial equipment across the Southwest, 22 years experience. February 11, 2023, northbound on US 93 through Arizona, approaching the Kingman Way station. Routine check. Nothing unusual expected. I rolled onto the scale at 1:47 p.m., weight showing as I waited for the signal to proceed. The digital readout flickered. Showed my normal weight, 73,280 pounds. Flickered again. Showed 71.15 pounds, flickered, showed 68,940 pounds. Kept cycling through different values, none of them matching, all of them close but wrong, like the scale was measuring multiple versions of my truck simultaneously, getting confused about which weight was real. The weighmaster's voice came through the intercom. Unit 749er, hold position. We're getting inconsistent readings. I waited, watching the scale display cycle through weights. Then it showed something impossible, 52,100 pounds. I was hauling a full load of industrial machinery, 14 tons of cargo that I'd loaded yesterday. That was definitely still in my trailer. There was no scenario where my rig weighed 52,000 pounds unless the cargo had vanished. The scale flickered again, 49,800 pounds. Lower still. The weighmaster came out to my truck holding a tablet, looking confused. Ma'am, I'm seeing some kind of malfunction. Your weight keeps changing and our records show you've already passed through this station multiple times today. That's impossible. This is my first time through. I've been driving since 7 a.m. from Phoenix, straight route, no stops at this station. He showed me the tablet. Security camera footage, time-stamped, showing my truck. Same number, same paint job, same cargo. Configuration, rolling across the scale at 9:23 a.m. Showed me again at 11:15 a.m., again at 12:47 p.m., again at 1:34 p.m., 5 separate times, all earlier today, all showing me driving through, getting weighed, proceeding. But I hadn't been through even once. That can't be me, I said. I was nowhere near Kingman at 9 a.m. He zoomed in on the 9:23 footage. The driver visible through the windshield was me. Same face, same jacket I was currently wearing, but the expression was different. More tired, more worn, like I'd been driving longer than I actually had. He showed me another clip, the 1:34 p.m. pass, 13 minutes ago. This version of me looked younger, more alert. Future me driving through the station before I'd arrived, being weighed before I'd existed in this moment. The scale is reading temporal data, the weighmaster said, like this was a known problem. Sometimes happens with older equipment. Gets confused about when a vehicle is being weighed, reads past and future weights instead of present. Usually fixes itself after a few minutes. But it wasn't fixing itself. The scale kept showing different values, and when I looked at the camera monitors, I could see myself, multiple versions passing through the station at different times, different dates. One timestamp showed February 17th, 6 days from now. Another showed March 3rd. Another showed last week. "What's happening?" I asked, voice shaking. The weighmaster checked his computer, frowned. "According to our records, your last passage through this station was February 17th at 11:42 a.m. That's 6 days from now. Your next passage is March 3rd at 3:15 p.m. You're passing through on a regular schedule every 2 to 3 weeks for the next 8 months. But I haven't been here. I won't be here. I don't even know if I'll have loads on this route in the future." He showed me the manifest logs. Each future passage had cargo documentation, what I'd be hauling, where I'd be going, all filled out and filed. February 17th, empty trailer, deadheading back to Phoenix. March 3rd, construction materials to Flagstaff. April 12th, electronics to Las Vegas. Every future trip documented, weighed, recorded before I'd lived it. "This has to be an error," I said. "Some kind of data corruption. Look at this." He pulled up the February 17th camera footage, 6 days in my future. The truck was mine, but weathered, dirtier than it currently was. The driver, me, looked exhausted, beaten down, and when the camera caught my face, I saw something in my own future eyes that looked like fear. He played the March 3rd footage. This version of me looked worse, thinner, older, like I'd aged months in 3 weeks. The truck showed damage, dents, and scrapes that didn't currently exist. And the cargo manifest showed construction materials, but the weight reading showed empty. "You weigh 49,800 pounds in that bun," the weighmaster said. "Empty weight plus maybe 2,000 pounds of cargo. But the manifest shows 14 tons. You're hauling ghost cargo, stuff that shows on paperwork but doesn't have mass." I looked at the current scale reading. It had stabilized at 73,280 pounds, my accurate present weight. But then it flickered again, showed 68,940, showed 52,100, showed weights from different times, different futures, and I understood. The scale wasn't malfunctioning. It was reading correctly. My truck existed at multiple points in time simultaneously, and the scale was measuring all of them, getting confused about which temporal instance was present. "Can I go?" I asked. "Can I just leave?" The weighmaster looked uncertain. "Technically, you're clear. Your current weight is legal, manifest checkout, but you're showing temporal inconsistency. I'm supposed to report that. Have your vehicle inspected for... I don't actually know. Time travel equipment? I don't have time travel equipment. I have a truck. It's normal. I'm normal." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Something was wrong, had been wrong maybe for weeks, and this weigh station scale was the first equipment sensitive enough to detect it. I was existing across multiple time periods, my truck present in multiple futures, and every future version was showing decay, showing deterioration, showing me getting worse. "Go," the weighmaster finally said. "But if you pass through again, when you pass through in 6 days, stop and let me know. I want to compare notes, see if your experience matches the timeline we're recording." I left the station, hands shaking on the wheel, trying to process what I'd seen. Camera footage of myself in the future, weight readings from times I hadn't lived yet, documentation of trips I hadn't taken. I was being measured ahead of time, being recorded before I existed, and every future recording showed me getting worse. I tried to alter course, to change the timeline, to not be on US 93 in 6 days. Took a different load, different route, should be in California on February 17th, nowhere near Kingman. but traffic problems forced a detour. Road closures redirected me. Against all intention, I found myself on US 93 approaching Kingman at exactly 11:42 a.m. on February 17th. The way station appeared ahead. I tried to bypass it, but mandatory inspection signs gave me no choice. I rolled onto the scale, and the weighmaster, same guy from 6 days ago, came out immediately, waving me to pull forward to the inspection area. "You're here," he said, "right on schedule. February 17th, 11:42 a.m., just like the recording showed." I got out of my truck, looked at him helplessly. I tried not to be. I took a different load, different route, but I ended up here anyway. "Your trailer's empty," he said. "Just like the manifest from 6 days ago predicted. Why, are you deadheading back to Phoenix?" I hadn't been planning to deadhead. I'd had cargo booked, but the load had canceled this morning last minute, and I was running empty, exactly as the future recording had shown. He pulled up the security footage from my first visit, showed me the clip from today, the February 17th footage that had been recorded 6 days ago. There I was, driving through, looking exactly as I currently looked, wearing exactly what I was currently wearing. Same exhausted expression I could feel on my face right now. "You're locked into a timeline," he said. "Whatever was recorded is what's happening. The scale saw your future, documented it, and now you're living exactly what was measured. You can't deviate." "The next recording shows March 3rd, I said. "Construction materials to Flagstaff, but the weight shows empty. That means I'll lose my cargo somehow. It'll vanish before I arrive." He nodded grimly. "And you'll still drive to the destination, still try to deliver nothing, still complete the route even though there's nothing to deliver. Because that's what was recorded, that's what the scale weighed." I drove away from Kingman feeling trapped, locked into a future that had already been measured, already documented. Took the March 3rd load, construction materials to Flagstaff, knowing I'd somehow lose it, that I'd arrive with an empty trailer even though the cargo was secure, strapped down, physically present. The cargo vanished overnight. I stopped at a rest area, checked the trailer before sleeping. Full load, 14 tons. Woke up 6 hours later, checked again, completely empty. No signs of theft, no broken seals, no explanation. 14 tons of construction materials had ceased to exist while I slept, and I had to drive to Flagstaff anyway, had to arrive at the destination and explain I'd lost an entire load that should have been impossible to lose. I passed through Kingman again March 3rd, 3:15 p.m., exactly as recorded. The scale weighed 52,100 pounds. The weighmaster checked the footage from 3 weeks ago, perfect match. Same weight, same empty trailer, same timeline. "The April recording shows you even lighter," he said. 47,000 pounds. You're losing weight across time, losing substance. Each future version of you is less than the previous. I kept driving, kept passing through Kingman every 2 to 3 weeks, kept matching the pre-recorded timeline exactly. Each time I was lighter, emptier, more worn. My truck was deteriorating faster than normal use would explain. My cargo kept vanishing, loads disappearing between pickup and delivery. I was completing routes that made no sense, driving empty miles to destinations where I had nothing to deliver. The weighmaster became obsessed with tracking me, documenting the decay. He showed me charts, my weight decreasing across time, approaching some asymptotic limit. "You're fading," he said. "Not dying, but dissolving, becoming less real. The scale measures mass energy and yours is decreasing. Eventually you'll hit zero, and then what? You'll cease to exist? Become entirely temporal, no physical presence at all?" I didn't know. Still don't know, but I keep passing through Kingman, keep getting weighed, keep matching the pre-recorded future perfectly. I'm down to 200 pounds now, lighter than my truck should weigh even empty. I'm losing mass, losing substance, becoming a ghost of myself driving ghost routes with ghost cargo. The final recording shows December 8th this year. My truck weighs 31,000 pounds, half what it should. The driver's seat is empty in the footage, the truck driving itself, and the scale reads my weight as present even though no one is visible behind the wheel. That's my future. 9 months from now, I'll pass through Kingman as pure absence, as weight without form, mass without body. I'm still driving toward that recorded future, unable to deviate, locked into the timeline the scale measured before I lived it. Every way station I pass, every scale I cross measures me as lighter, less substantial, closer to complete dissolution. The Waymaster says other drivers show similar patterns, futures recorded before living them. Timelines locked in place, gradual dissolution across pre-measured routes. The scales are reading destinies, documenting fates, weighing futures that become unchangeable once measured. I'll pass through Kingman again in 3 weeks. The recording shows 100 pounds. I know I'll match it exactly, I always do. And I'll keep matching, keep decreasing, keep fading until December 8th when I'll weigh 31,000 pounds and have no visible form. The scale doesn't lie, it measured my future, and the future it measured is the only future I can have. I'm being weighed across time, and each measurement removes a little more of me until eventually there's nothing left to weigh except the memory of a driver who once existed, now just a fluctuation in scale readings, a ghost in the weigh station records, forever passing through at scheduled times with decreasing mass and increasing absence. Story 7. The Route That Folded. Highway 12 through Montana was supposed to be 280 miles of mountain road, but 50 miles in I passed the same landmark I'd seen at mile 5, and at mile 90 I was back at the starting point, and the road wasn't looping. It was folding back on itself, doubling over like a ribbon, presenting the same geography from different directions. And I drove for 9 hours, covering 600 miles according to my odometer, but ended where I'd started. Having traveled vast distance through zero space, trapped on a route that occupied one location while pretending to span miles. Derek Holland, 53 years old, hauling timber products through mountain states, 29 years experience. July 2nd, 2023, starting a run from Missoula to Helena, Montana. Highway 12 over Lolo Pass. Beautiful route, dangerous in winter but manageable in summer. The whole trip should take maybe 4 hours, 115 miles. I'd driven it dozens of times. Mile marker 5 showed a distinctive rock formation on the left. 3 pillars of stone, natural formation, impossible to mistake for anything else. I noted it mentally, appreciating the scenery as always, continuing east. The road climbed into mountains, twisted through passes, typical Montana terrain. Mile marker 53, 48 miles later, I saw the same rock formation. Same 3 pillars. Left side of the road. But I was heading east now, and previously it had been on my left while heading east. Impossible for it to appear again in the same configuration unless I'd somehow turned around. I pulled over, checked my GPS. It showed me proceeding correctly eastward, 82 miles from Missoula, on track for Helena. But the landmark disagreed. I was seeing geography that should be 48 miles behind me, appearing ahead as if I'd covered no distance. I continued driving more carefully now, watching landmarks. Mile marker 67 showed a creek crossing, specific pattern of water flow around stones. I recognized it. I'd crossed this exact spot at mile marker 19. Same rocks, same water, same everything, but now located 48 miles further east. The road was folding, presenting the same terrain multiple times at different odometer readings. I was driving through space that repeated itself, that existed at multiple positions simultaneously, and Highway 12 was threaded through these repetitions, creating the illusion of forward motion, while actually circling back through the same geography. I kept driving, documenting landmarks, marking each repetition. The three pillars appeared again at mile marker 98. The creek appeared at mile marker 131. I was covering distance according to my odometer, consuming fuel, spending time. But my actual position wasn't changing. I was cycling through the same 50-mile segment repeatedly, experiencing it from different angles, different directions, while my instruments insisted I was progressing normally. My GPS started glitching, showing my position flickering between multiple coordinates, all on Highway 12, all valid positions but separated by dozens of miles. I was simultaneously at mile 5 and mile 53 and mile 98, existing at multiple points on the route because the route had folded back on itself, compressed multiple positions into single locations. I tried calling dispatch. Connection failed. Not no signal, but route error, like my phone couldn't determine where I was calling from. Couldn't establish origin point because I was calling from multiple positions simultaneously. Tried CB radio, silence, or rather, echo. My transmission bounced back immediately, like I was broadcasting to myself, like the only receiver in range was me from a different position on the folded road. 4 hours into the drive, I should be arriving in Helena. Instead, I was passing the three pillars again, 5th time now, at mile marker 146. The odometer showed 146 miles covered. GPS showed me still on Highway 12 but couldn't agree on specific location. Fuel gauge showed expected consumption. But I hadn't advanced, was still cycling through the same segment, experiencing the same landmarks in rotating sequence. I stopped at what should be a ranger station, place I'd stopped before, familiar building. Went inside, empty, not abandoned. Lived in, maintained, but nobody present. Coffee was fresh, still hot. Computer screens showed active monitoring of park conditions. But no rangers, no staff, no people. I tried the phone. It rang somewhere in the building, echo of my own call. I followed the sound, found a desk phone ringing, answered it. My own voice said, "Hello, who is this?" from the receiver, but I hadn't spoken. The phone was transmitting my future words, or my words from another position on the folded route, time and space both compressed. I hung up, went back outside. My truck was gone, not stolen, gone like I'd never parked it, like I'd arrived on foot. I walked around the building. There it was, parked in a different spot, a spot I hadn't chosen, and inside the driver's seat was a note in my handwriting. You're at mile marker 28 and mile marker 96 and mile marker 163 simultaneously. The route folded at 3:47 p.m. on July 2nd. Stop trying to reach Helena. Helena doesn't exist anymore, just the fold, just the 50-mile segment repeating forever. I dropped the note, checked my watch, 3:51 p.m. The fold had happened 4 minutes ago, or was happening now, or would happen soon. Time was as compressed as space, multiple moments occupying single duration. I got back in my truck, started driving again, faster now, trying to outrun the fold, to reach Helena before the route compressed completely. But every mile I drove added to the odometer without advancing my position. I passed the three pillars at mile marker 212, passed the creek at mile marker 248. The same 50 miles, cycling faster now, repetitions accelerating. Other vehicles appeared, all driving the same route, all trapped. I saw a sedan pass me heading west, but we were both heading east, same direction, somehow going opposite ways on the folded road. Saw my own truck ahead of me, driving the same route minutes or hours ahead, and when I tried to catch up, I was always exactly the same distance behind, chasing myself through space that had no depth. I drove for 9 hours total. Odometer showed 623 miles covered, but I was still on. Highway 12, still passing the same landmarks and cycle. Still trapped in a 50-mile segment that had folded back on itself, creating a loop that presented as linear travel. Eventually, I ran out of fuel. The truck coasted, stopped, engine dying. I was at mile marker 5, the beginning point, back where I'd first noticed the 3 pillars. The odometer showed 623 miles from Missoula, but I was 50 miles east of Missoula, same position as start. I got out, started walking. Maybe on foot I could escape the fold, could find edges, could discover how space had compressed. I walked east, away from my truck, past landmarks, the 3 pillars, the creek, all the familiar formations. Walked for hours, feet aching, sun setting. Came back to my truck from the west, from behind, having walked in a straight line east, but arriving from opposite direction. The route was a Mobius strip, a closed loop that presented as bidirectional road, and I'd walked the entire length only to discover it was one continuous surface with no end, no exit, no destination. Helena didn't exist anymore, or had never existed, or existed only as a label for a point on the route that the fold had consumed. I've been on Highway 12 for 3 weeks now, maybe more. Hard to track time when days cycle like miles. My truck ran out of fuel at mile marker 5, but fuel appears periodically. Sometimes I wake and the tank is full again, or partial, like the fold is providing just enough to keep me cycling, to prevent escape through stationary exhaustion. Other drivers are here too, trapped, walking or driving the same 50 miles forever. We pass each other heading opposite directions while actually traveling the same direction. We recognize the same landmarks, document the same anomalies. One driver claims she's been here since 2019, 4 years cycling through the same segment, unable to leave. We've tried everything, leaving the road, hiking into mountains, following streams. Every path leads back to Highway 12, to the same 50-mile segment. The fold is complete, absolute. This section of Montana has compressed into a single location that presents as multiple positions, and we're trapped in the presentation, existing at every mile marker simultaneously, while experiencing them sequentially. Sometimes I see myself driving past future or past versions, cycling through the fold ahead or behind. Sometimes I find notes I haven't written yet, warnings from my own future trapped further into the cycle. They say the fold is tightening, the 50 miles shrinking, landmarks appearing more frequently as space compresses further. Eventually, they warn the entire route will collapse to a single point, all 600 miles existing at one coordinate, and we'll all be there simultaneously, occupying the same location from infinite perspectives. I'm still driving when fuel appears, still walking when it doesn't, still cycling through the same landmarks, same miles, same moments. The odometer has rolled over twice, past 99,999 miles, and started again at 0. Distance accumulated without distance traveled, numbers cycling like everything else. Highway 12 through Montana is 280 miles long, but it's all the same mile, folded and refolded until it's one location pretending to be many. And I'm trapped in that pretense, driving forever, covering distance that doesn't exist, approaching destinations that can't be reached because there's nowhere to go except here, which is also there, which is also everywhere and nowhere, on a route that folded into itself and forgot how to unfold. The 3 pillars appear ahead, again. I've seen them thousands of times now, and each time they're the same formation in the same location at a different mile marker, proof that space is negotiable and routes are just suggestions that geography doesn't have to follow. I'm at mile marker 5, and mile marker 53, and mile marker 98. And every other marker between Missoula and Helena, all of them simultaneously, all of them here, all of them the same place, folded into illusion of distance. Welcome to Highway 12. You're trapped now, too. Just by reading this, just by knowing about the fold, you've become entangled with it, and one day you'll drive this route and recognize the three pillars and realize you've been here before, even if you haven't. Because we're all here, always here, cycling through the same miles forever. The route folded, and we folded with it. Story 8. The delivery that refused to complete. I arrived at the delivery address 17 times, but the warehouse receiving dock kept sliding away like a mirage when I approached, and the workers inside kept waving me toward a different door that led to the same dock from a different angle. And after 8 hours of attempting delivery, I'd backed into 43 different loading positions without ever achieving final placement, and the cargo remained undelivered. The destination remained unreached, and the manifest showed in transit permanently, even though I'd arrived, had always arrived, could never stop arriving at a place that refused to accept completion. Rebecca Walsh, 41 years old, hauling consumer goods across the Midwest, 13 years experience. September 28, 2022, delivering a load of furniture to a distribution center in Columbus, Ohio. Standard delivery, place I'd been a dozen times before, no complications expected. I arrived at the facility at 2:33 p.m. on schedule, found Dock 7 as assigned. I backed in carefully, aligning with the dock, feeling the familiar thump as my trailer made contact with the bumpers. Perfect approach. I set the brakes, filled out my paperwork, knocked on the warehouse door. A worker opened it, glanced at my trailer, shook his head. "Wrong dock," he said. "You need Dock 12. I checked my paperwork. My assignment says Dock 7. Dock 7 is for inbound automotive parts, your furniture. Dock 12. He pointed across the lot. I pulled out, drove around to Dock 12, backed in, same careful alignment, same satisfying thump of contact. Knocked on the door. Different worker, same response. "Wrong dock. Furniture goes to Dock 19. The other guy said Dock 12. He was wrong. Dock 19. Pointed further across the lot. I pulled out, found Dock 19, backed in. Before I could even knock, a worker opened the door, looked at my trailer, frowned. "This is express freight, your standard delivery, Dock 7. I was just at Dock 7. They sent me to 12. 12 sent me to 19. They're all confused today. Dock 7 definitely, go back." I went back to Dock 7. Different worker this time, one I hadn't seen before. "Furniture? Yeah, that's Dock 7, come on in." He gestured for me to back up. I did. Same careful approach, same perfect alignment. But when I set my brakes and started to get out, I noticed I wasn't at Dock 7 anymore. The dock number painted on the pavement said 12. But I hadn't moved. I'd backed into 7 and somehow ended up at 12. The worker came out, looked confused. "Why'd you park at 12? I said 7. "I did park at 7. I backed into 7. But the dock number definitely said 12 now, and when I looked back at 7, there was another truck parked there. Not there when I'd started backing in, but present now, occupying the space I'd just left. I pulled out again, drove to Dock 7. The other truck was gone. I backed in, watched my mirrors carefully, never taking my eyes off the dock number. 7. 7 throughout the entire approach. Made contact, set brakes, looked at the pavement. Dock 19. I'd arrived at 7, backed into 7, parked at 19. Something was wrong with the facility's geography, or with my perception, or with the fundamental relationship between intention and outcome. I couldn't seem to complete the delivery because I couldn't maintain consistent position. Arriving at one dock, ending at another, instructions changing, workers contradicting. I tried 13 more times over the next 3 hours. Each approach felt correct, looked correct, ended incorrectly. Backed into 7, parked at 12, backed into 12, ended at 19. Backed into 19, found myself at 23 even though the facility only had 20 docks. The warehouse was expanding, creating new dock numbers, new positions, more spaces for me to arrive at incorrectly. The workers all had different instructions: Dock 7, Dock 12, Dock 32, Dock 5, Dock 47. The numbers kept increasing, the facility growing to accommodate my failure to complete delivery. And each time I pulled out to try again, my previous position disappeared. Dock number changed, or another truck appeared there instantly, or the dock ceased to exist entirely, replaced by wall. Around 6:00 p.m., 4 hours into this nightmare, I stopped trying to follow instructions. Just picked a dock at random, Dock 8, and backed in without asking anyone. Perfect alignment, contact, brakes. I got out, opened the trailer doors myself, started pulling out cargo, determined to deliver even without authorization. The cargo was wrong. Not furniture, electronics. Boxes labeled with products I hadn't loaded, manifests I'd never seen. I checked my paperwork. Definitely showed furniture, showed the load I'd picked up in Indianapolis. But the physical cargo was different, had changed. And when I looked at my trailer, it was different too. Different manufacturer, different size, not even my trailer anymore. I walked around to look at my truck. Different model, different paint job, not my vehicle. I was standing next to a truck I'd never seen, hauling cargo I hadn't loaded, parked at a dock I couldn't seem to reach correctly, in a facility that kept rearranging itself around my attempts to complete delivery. A supervisor approached, holding a tablet. "Rebecca Walsh? You're 4 hours overdue for delivery. What's the holdup?" "I've been trying to deliver. Your docks keep changing numbers, your workers keep giving different instructions. I can't seem to complete the approach." He checked his tablet. "Our record shows 17 failed delivery attempts. You've backed into docks 7, 12, 19, 23, 31, 38, 44, and 9 others, but you haven't completed dock protocol at any of them. Why do you keep pulling out before unloading?" "Because I end up at the wrong dock. I aim for 7 and at 12. I aim for 12 and at 19. I can't make them match." He nodded sympathetically. "That happens sometimes with new drivers. The facility has a complex layout. You need to account for gravitational drift during approach. The docks shift position slightly based on cargo weight and approach angle. It's in the delivery instructions." I pulled out my instructions. Just standard dock assignment. No mention of gravitational drift or shifting positions. "This says Dock 7, nothing about physics. Old instructions, outdated. We've had quantum interference issues since the expansion last year. Dock positions aren't fixed anymore. They exist in probability fields, and your approach vector partially determines where you end up. Most drivers figure it out after a few attempts. I've made 17 attempts. Then you're approaching wrong. Try backing in without looking. Don't observe the dock number. Observation collapses the probability field incorrectly. Just back up blindly and you'll end up at the right position." This was insane, but I'd tried everything else. I got back in my truck, positioned for Dock 7, closed my eyes, backed up using mirrors alone, not looking at dock numbers. Felt the contact, set brakes. Opened my eyes, Dock 7. Finally, correct position. I got out, opened the trailer. Furniture, correct cargo, my trailer, my truck, everything aligned. The supervisor came over with a dock worker. "Perfect. Dock 7, let's get you unloaded." They started pulling cargo, scanning items, loading into the warehouse. I stood watching, relieved, thinking the ordeal was finally over. Then the supervisor stopped, checked his tablet, frowned. "This is the wrong delivery. You're scheduled for Dock 12. "No, I'm Dock 7. This is Dock 7. You just confirmed. Dock 7 is automotive parts. Your furniture. That's Dock 12. He pointed. "You need to reposition." "I'm already positioned. I'm at Dock 7. You're unloading my cargo right now." He looked confused, checked his tablet again. Our system shows you at Dock 12. It shows you arrived at Dock 12 17 minutes ago and we're currently unloading at Dock 12. But you're clearly at Dock 7. The system and reality don't match. I walked over to look at his tablet. It showed my truck at Dock 12, camera footage of my trailer backed into Dock 12, workers unloading furniture from my trailer at Dock 12, live feed, real time. But I was standing at Dock 7 watching the same workers unload the same furniture from the same trailer at Dock 7. I was delivering at 2 docks simultaneously. Existed at multiple positions. The facility's quantum interference had split me across probability fields, and I was completing delivery in parallel states, both real, both happening, both incompatible. Which one is actually me? I asked the supervisor. He checked his tablet, looked at me, checked again. Both. You're at Dock 7 and Dock 12 simultaneously. Your approach collapsed the probability field into superposition. You're delivering at both positions until we confirm which one is complete, at which point the other will cease to have happened. Which one will cease? Won't know until we finish unloading. Whichever completes first becomes the real delivery. The other becomes retroactively non-existent. I walked over to Dock 12. There I was. Same truck, same trailer, same cargo being unloaded. The me at Dock 12 looked tired, stressed, and when we made eye contact, we both felt the same disorienting doubling. Seeing ourselves from outside, existing in 2 places simultaneously. This is wrong, both of us said at the same time. The supervisor appeared between us, or was there the whole time, also doubled, managing both deliveries simultaneously. It'll resolve. Just let the process complete. One of you will finish first, become real, and the other will have never arrived. But both deliveries progressed at exactly the same rate. Same items removed, same scanning, same pace. We stayed synchronized, stayed doubled, and the facility couldn't determine which delivery was real, which was ghost. Hours passed. The cargo was completely unloaded at both docks simultaneously, but the manifest showed in transit still, delivery incomplete, because completion required singular resolution, and we remained plural. You need to choose, the supervisor said, talking to both of me. Decide which dock is correct. Commit to one position, force the collapse. Both of me stood paralyzed, unable to choose, because choosing meant one version ceased to exist, retroactively never happened. And how do you choose which version of yourself gets to be real? The sun set. The facility closed. The workers went home. Both versions of me remained parked at our respective docks, cargo delivered but not accepted. Manifest incomplete, trapped in superposition. The supervisor left his tablet showing both deliveries, both trucks, both me, eternally unloading, eternally in transit, never completing. I'm still there, at Dock 7 and Dock 12, delivering furniture that's been delivered but not received, completing an arrival that refuses to complete. Both versions of me exist, neither more real than the other, and the manifest shows in transit permanently because we're stuck between states, between docks, between moments of completion that can't collapse into singular reality. Other drivers have the same problem. I see them at multiple docks, delivering to multiple positions simultaneously, trapped in facility quantum interference, unable to complete because completion requires singular position, and they exist in superposition. The delivery refused to complete, refuses still, will refuse forever. I'm there now, at Dock 7, at Dock 12, and the cargo is both unloaded and still loaded, the trailer both empty and full, the delivery both finished and ongoing, forever suspended in the moment before final confirmation, before singular reality, before completion that never comes. Drive past the facility sometime. Look at Docks 7 and 12. You'll see me at both, backed in perfectly. Cargo half unloaded, frozen in the attempt to finish a delivery that can't finish because finishing requires choosing one reality and abandoning another. And neither version of me can let go. Can't cease existing. Can't accept that completion means one of us never was. The manifest says, in transit, always, forever, because I'm still on my way to a destination I've already reached but can't finish reaching, trapped in the space between arrival and completion, between position and confirmation, between the dock I meant to find and the dock I actually reached and the infinite docks I'm simultaneously attempting to deliver to across collapsed probability fields. I never completed the delivery. I'm still trying. Both of me. All of me. Forever approaching, forever arriving, forever failing to finish the last moment before acceptance, before reality collapses into singular truth. Dock 7, Dock 12, and 41 others I'm also parked at, all simultaneously, all incomplete, all waiting for confirmation that will never come because the quantum interference is permanent, and the facility forgot how to resolve probability fields into singular outcomes. I'm still delivering, will always be delivering, can never finish delivering. The cargo is both here and there and everywhere between, and I'm driving toward completion that recedes with every mile, every approach, every moment that refuses to become final. Story 9. The Night That Didn't End. Sunset was at 8:47 p.m. and I watched it happen, watched the sun touch the horizon and slip below, but then it kept setting, descending for hours while night never fully arrived, and by midnight the sun was still visible as a sliver, still sliding downward infinitely slowly, and by 4 a.m. it still hadn't completed setting, and dawn never came because sunset never finished. And I've been driving through eternal twilight for 6 days, chasing a night that won't begin and running from a day that won't end. Trapped in the moment between while the sun hangs frozen just below the horizon. Neither up nor down, neither day nor night. James Morrison, 37 years old, hauling agricultural products through the Plains States. 11 years experience. June 21st, 2023, summer solstice, longest day of the year. I was westbound on I-90 through South Dakota, running late on a delivery hoping to make up time before nightfall. The sun was setting ahead of me, massive and orange on the horizon, beautiful in that particular way sunset gets in flat country with nothing to obstruct it. I checked the time, 8:47 p.m. Checked the GPS. Sunset calculated at 8:47 p.m. for this location. Perfect timing. I watched the sun touch the horizon, watched it begin to descend, the bottom edge slipping below the Earth's curve. And it kept descending. Slowly. Incrementally. The sun dropped below the horizon at the normal rate for maybe 30 seconds, then slowed. The descent became gradual, deliberate, like watching a clock hand move. Imperceptible in single moments, but visible over minutes. By 9 p.m. the sun should have been fully set, but instead it was still half visible. A dome of orange fire hovering at the horizon, refusing to complete its descent. I kept driving, watching in my mirrors and through my windshield as the sun continued its impossible crawl downward. By 9:30 p.m. it was a quarter visible, a sliver of orange curve. By 10:20 p.m. it was a thin line, but still present, still setting, still refusing to finish. The sky around it stayed twilight blue, that deep color just after sunset, holding steady instead of darkening to night. By 11 p.m. the sun was barely visible, just the faintest suggestion of glow at the exact point it had been for over 2 hours. Twilight persisted unchanging, and I realized with creeping dread that the sun wasn't going to finish setting. It was stuck in the final moment before disappearance, descending infinitely slowly toward a completion point it would never reach, and day was bleeding into night without ever releasing control. I pulled into a truck stop, found other drivers standing in the parking lot staring at the western horizon where the sun's last trace still glowed. An older driver, maybe 60, stood with his arms crossed, shaking his head. "Been watching it for 3 hours," he said when I approached. "Damn thing won't set, just keeps dropping slower and slower, but it never goes away." "Is this normal for summer solstice?" I asked, knowing it wasn't, but hoping for some explanation. "Solstice is the longest day, sure, but it still ends. Sun still sets normally just later. This," he gestured at the horizon, "this is something else. Sun's been setting since 8:47, it's midnight now. Should have been full dark for hours." Another driver, younger woman, was checking her phone. "Look at the time lapse." She showed us her screen, camera app that had been recording sunset for the past 3 hours, compressed into 30 seconds. The sun descended for about 5 seconds of video, then appeared to freeze, barely moving for the remaining 25 seconds. "It's asymptotic, approaching zero velocity. Mathematically, it'll take infinite time to finish setting." "That's impossible," I said. "So is watching sunset for 3 hours and still seeing the sun. Impossible doesn't mean not happening." I went inside, ordered coffee, sat at the counter trying to process this. Through the windows, I could see the twilight holding steady, that perfect in-between light that should last maybe 30 minutes but had been constant for over 3 hours now. Other drivers were discussing it, theories and speculations, solar anomaly, magnetic pole shift, some kind of atmospheric refraction creating an illusion. But it wasn't an illusion. I went back outside at 1:00 a.m. The sun's glow was still there, fainter but present, still descending at a rate so slow it appeared motionless. The stars were visible overhead, had been for hours, but the western horizon remained lit, refusing to release the sun into night. I tried to sleep in my cab, but twilight poured through the windows, never dimming, and my circadian rhythm was confused, body unable to determine if it should be sleeping or waking. I lay there for 2 hours, checking the horizon every few minutes. The sun's trace was still there, still glowing, still setting. By 4:00 a.m. I gave up on sleep, started driving again, heading west toward the sunset that wouldn't finish. Maybe if I drove into it, I'd pass through whatever boundary was holding it, reach a zone where night was normal. But as I drove, the sun's position relative to me didn't change. It stayed at the same apparent angle, same distance, like I was moving with it, or it was moving with me, maintaining constant separation. Other traffic was minimal. Most people had pulled over to wait out the phenomenon, hoping it would resolve. But a few trucks stayed on the road, all of us heading west, all chasing the incomplete sunset, all trapped in perpetual twilight. My phone showed 6:00 a.m. Sunrise should be starting, new day beginning, but the sun was still setting from yesterday, still hadn't finished the previous day, and the eastern horizon showed no sign of dawn. The sky stayed twilight blue, unchanging, locked in the liminal moment between day and night. By noon, 12 hours past sunset, the sun's glow was so faint I could barely see it, but it was there, detectable, refusing to vanish completely. The world existed in permanent twilight, every direction showing the same deep blue, shadows present but soft, light dim but constant. It felt like being trapped in a photograph, in a single moment stretched infinitely, and my psychological state started fracturing. Without day-night cycles, without the rhythm of light and dark, my sense of time became untethered. Hours felt like minutes or days. I couldn't tell if I'd been driving for 12 hours or 12 years. My watch showed time passing, but time wasn't connected to anything real, just numbers changing without meaning, without the astronomical confirmation that time is real. I stopped at another truck stop, found a group of drivers who'd been there since the sunset started. They looked wrong, tired but not sleepy, awake but not alert, existing in some metabolic in-between that matched the twilight around us. "Day 6, one of them said when I asked how long they'd been there. "June 21st is day 1, right? This is day 6, or hour 120, or year 0. Time stopped meaning anything when the sun stopped setting. June 21st was yesterday, I said, checking my phone. June 22nd. But he was right. It didn't feel like a new day because the previous day hadn't ended. We were still in June 21st, still in that sunset, still in the moment between. They're saying it's spreading, another driver said, showing me a news site on his phone. Twilight zone expanding east and west, covering more geography. Started here in South Dakota, now it's reached Montana and Minnesota. Sun's stuck setting everywhere within the zone, and the zone is growing. I read the article. Scientists were calling it a temporal distortion, a stretching of the sunset moment across increasing area. Theories ranged from magnetic field anomalies to relativistic effects to solar physics nobody understood. But the practical effect was clear. Everyone in the twilight zone was trapped in endless June 21st, in permanent sunset, and normal day-night cycles had ceased. I got back on the road, kept driving west, and eventually crossed into Montana where the sun appeared slightly higher. Like I'd moved backward through the sunset, reached an earlier point in the endless descent. But it was still setting, still moving infinitely slowly downward. And I realized the entire zone was experiencing stretched time, sunset happening everywhere simultaneously at different rates, creating a gradient of twilight that covered hundreds of miles. My cargo was time-sensitive, agricultural products with 3-day shelf life. I'd picked it up June 20th. By any normal calendar, I should deliver by June 23rd. But June 21st refused to end, refused to become June 22nd, and I was trapped in a day that wouldn't advance. Hauling cargo that was either rotting or preserved depending on whether biological time followed calendar time or live time. I checked the cargo. Spoiling. Time was passing for the produce even if it wasn't passing for the sun or the date. The physical world was aging while the astronomical world froze, and I was caught between, driving through twilight that never ended while my cargo decayed normally. By day 9, or hour 216, I'd given up on delivery. Drove to the destination anyway, because what else could I do? And found the facility closed, abandoned, no one working because without day-night cycles, without the structure of calendar days, economic activity had ceased. People stayed home, confused, waiting for June 21st to end so June 22nd could begin. I'm still driving, still westbound, still chasing the sunset that won't finish. The zone has spread across the entire country now, coast to coast, and everyone is trapped in eternal June 21st in permanent twilight. The sun hasn't completed setting anywhere, dawn hasn't begun anywhere. We're all stuck in the gradient between day and night, in stretched time, in a moment that was supposed to last 30 minutes but has become our permanent state. My phone shows dates advancing, June 22nd, 23rd, July 1st. But they're lies. It's still June 21st, still sunset, still twilight. The calendar progresses, but reality doesn't, and we're trapped in desynchronization, living through days that aren't happening while stuck in a day that won't end. Other drivers have stopped moving, parked their trucks and given up, accepting twilight as permanent condition. But I keep driving west, keep chasing the sun's trace, hoping eventually I'll reach the edge of the stretched moment, escape into normal time where nights end and days begin and sunset takes 30 minutes instead of infinity. The sun's glow is almost invisible now. Weeks into the infinite descent, barely a suggestion of light but still present, still preventing completion. And I know it'll take forever to vanish completely, literally forever, a asymptotic approach to darkness that never reaches zero illumination. I've been driving through this twilight for what feels like years but is still somehow June 21st, 2023, the longest day that became the only day. The sunset that consumed all other times, and I'll keep driving, keep chasing, keep trapped in the moment between moments, in the hour that stretched to contain infinity, in the day that forgot how to end. The sun is still setting, will always be setting. can never finish setting. And I'm driving through its endless descent, through twilight made permanent, through time that flows without advancing, forever westbound, forever chasing completion that recedes exactly as fast as I approach. June 21st. Eternal sunset. The day that never ends, and the night that never comes. I'm still there, still driving, still watching the sun's impossible descent toward a horizon it will never fully reach.